Hello everyone, I don't know if it's just me, but nowadays it feels like there's a lot more drama and negativity in the Hoyo community. If you feel this way, perhaps this video will be of some interest, or if you're just here to listen to the tea, then welcome aboard too. I want to talk about this because it's a new year, new version, and as such, we should strive to become new and better people. And to do that, with the help of Hu Tao and Aglai's black screen, we can reveal and cleanse the filth. The reason why I believe it's so important to tackle the negativity now is because the community is the lifeblood of the game, not the other way around. As such, if we lose people due to the doom and gloom or just foster a toxic environment, it will turn away new and veteran players alike, causing the game to actually die. Now, critiquing and discussing the game is not only fine, but healthy for the game as that's how the player's endgame evolves. Voicing our concerns and feedback can lead to good changes, which we can see with the 3.0 developer radio, which addressed some concerns with the 3.0 story and gameplay in general. Now, I believe the criticisms and discussions and how it's been executed by content creators and vocal people alike is not healthy for the community, even if it may make the game better. This is because the way these topics get brought about and discussed brings about negativity. It's all about how we voice our concerns.
Yeah? What's the difference? Presentation!
Giving feedback in a calm, thoughtful, and constructive way makes it much more likely to be heard and brings about other good ideas. However, when criticism is delivered with excess negativity or outright misinformation, it doesn't foster improvement. It just creates unnecessary panic and toxicity within the community. There's a very big difference between I don't think X is good and want improvements versus this shit is ass, fix it. There is a very big difference between Aglai is not the most free-to-play friendly versus she is ass without dedicated supports. Though changes are coming, it's the precedent that it sets that's so bad. This precedent being, complaining gets what you want. I'm all for changes, but it's about how we get it that I think matters a lot. Again, I'm not saying these things don't exist or the concerns aren't valid, but rather that a lot of these things get blown way out of proportion, which has warped people's perception on the game. Speaking of perception, this is actually a key factor in what's occurring. I'll leave this comment on the screen because they absolutely cooked. But essentially, the way we choose to view the game shapes our experience. If we constantly focus on a glass half empty perspective, every flaw will be magnified, making the game feel much worse than it actually is. And of course, vice versa. Ideally, we meet somewhere in the middle, but perhaps closer to the half full side. Let's go over the recent drama with the black screens and the 3.0 quest. The memes were pretty funny at first, but over time, the joke and perceived severity of the issue got blown way out of proportion. This led to a bandwagon where more and more people jumped on the complaint train, turning what was a minor flaw into a full-blown controversy. Now, let me ask you, how many black screens were in this 8-hour quest? 20? 40? 60? Now, perhaps even 100. Keep in mind, people made a very big deal out of this. There were roughly 24, which I'll put the timestamps of what I found on the screen and a link below if you want to look at them for yourselves. This means roughly 3 black screens every hour of gameplay. Yeah, not bad. But what if they were used for very important scenes? Of the 24, there were only 2 which I thought could actually use animations. One being the scene with Black Swan and March, and the other when Dan Heng gave us March's camera, which even then, not a big deal. This sentiment, along with the overall negative feedback from content creators, likely influenced how players who didn't play the story yet perceive the game. It's like you hear your friend talking shit about a person you haven't even met yet, and then once you do, you already have your preconceived notions and a negative bias towards them. But not only would this affect people who didn't play the quest yet, it would also affect people who did complete it. Using what user Mr. Spaceman Stuff said, who cooked in their post, which I'll reference later, the idea that the current storytelling is full of black screen white text scenes that should have been CG or animations is nothing more than a Mandela effect live in the making. If you actually go through the story, you'll know that this is nonsense. Now, people who simply want more unique animations for particular scenes rather than a black screen, that's perfectly valid. This has been addressed by Hoyo, which is good, but again, it's the manner in which we address the issue which I dislike. That it's 1. Blown out of proportion, and 2. Doesn't accurately reflect the game. I do want to note that this basically only lasted a few days before everybody kinda just moved on. That's just the trend of these things. People complain for a bit, forget it existed, then something else pops up. Though the drama dies down, the sentiment lingers for a while. And who knows, maybe we can stop the drama from happening in the first place. Hello, future editor here. I originally wanted to have this video into two parts. The first explaining topics like power creep, where I believe Hoyo actually does a great job in balancing their characters, then skill expression, and lastly HP inflation. I was hoping to inform people on these topics to reduce the negativity going around these subjects. But then I realized that the video was gonna stretch up to around 4 hours, if not more, and nobody wants to watch all that. Hell, I don't even know if people are gonna watch this one. So instead, I'll make a separate video for that when the time comes or if this video does well. But for today, I will be going over the various dramas regarding Hoyo and our community, and I'll also talk about bait. After which, I'll talk about the culture and how/why I believe it's gone so negative, the troublemakers, how we could fix the issue, and some other stuff. Before I start, I just want to say I'm more than willing to discuss my thoughts with people in the comment section. I also hope people talk it out with each other and share their thoughts so we can see all the different sides of the picture, because we do not do enough of this, which I'll talk about later. I want to emphasize that this is also just one man's critique. Though I try to be objective, there of course will be things that are subjective and takes that were influenced by my experience. I'm aware this video may be controversial, so I'm being pretty careful with my words. But that being said, there are some things that I'll be pretty harsh about because they genuinely piss me off. Also, I'm not referring to the Hoyo community as a whole. I believe generally it's just some people which cause issues that subsequently affect a lot more people. With that said, let's get on with the video. I want to first start with an analogy of the situation, which there will be a lot of throughout the video. For this section, I will be using Star Wars 2.6 quests with Rappa and Slumbernana to do so. If you don't know the context, don't worry, as I should give enough information for you to understand. Now, as you may or may not have remembered, Penacony was infected by a mimetic virus which turned everyone into a monkey by the man Dr. Primitive. Turning into a monkey turned you, well, into a monkey. That's pretty simple. Now, what's relevant is the idea of a mimetic virus. But to understand that, we need to know what a meme is first. Simply put, a meme is an idea, behavior, culture, or anything along that likeness. Understanding that, a mimetic virus would be, as Asta and Narin Trashkin explains,
Asta explained that the mimetic virus is an information particle that behaves like a virus. It spreads rapidly and can infect both living beings and inanimate objects. In living beings, this virus can alter or contaminate the way the host thinks.
TLDR, thoughts, ideas, and culture rapidly spreads and infects via social media and people. Sounds kind of familiar, huh? If I were to recontextualize, the mimetic virus while in Honkai was brain rot, in our case it's negativity and toxicity. Yes, brain rot too, but that's not an issue. Whatever the case is, when it spreads like wildfire. It negatively impacts people and has them aggressing into saying whatever the popular sentiment is at that time, like calling everything power creep now or just straight up hating. Regardless, it usually becomes an echo chamber which is nigh impossible to stop. But just like Star Rail, this can be stopped.
All we need to do is bring those disillusioned fans back to their senses to quell the rogue waves of feelings.
There's no need to replace the Slumbernana monkeys with ninjas. We just have to snap them back to their senses. That alone is enough to undermine the influence of the mimetic virus. And when people no longer blindly follow Slumbernana monkey, we will be able to easily destroy this dreamscape.
I believe by showing people how the game state actually is and a more grounded way to perceive the game or community, we should keep the negativity at bay and lead our community into a healthier state. And by revealing the underlying cancers in the community, we can maybe remedy the situation, because how can you tackle an issue if you don't even know it exists? Next, let me clear some things regarding Hoyoverse. This section, just like the rest of the video, will be conjecture and what I've pieced together. I won't delve into the recent lawsuit for Genshin, as I personally believe the evidence provided was kinda bad, though I do agree for the need for increased transparency. There isn't much to talk about as Hoyo already made their statement talking about how they'll settle to keep the transparency and trust of the community, which is based. Now, moving on to my points. Firstly, I believe while Hoyo of course wants to make money, I do not believe they are maliciously trying to bait and shaft you at every single corner, like what some content creators are trying to make you believe. They simply make money by making a good game, advertising well, and following their formula. Let's look at Genshin 5.3 and the controversy with its rewards. During this time, so many people and content creators were saying this is corporate greed at its finest, releasing Malvika and sHiLLing at the same time and giving the rewards on the second half just to shaft the players. How could you do this, Hoyo? You are such a greedy company. How could anybody deny this? It's GG for me. My video is cooked. Now, what if by an off chance they released the Lantern Rite rewards during the Lantern Rite? Oh my god! And perhaps by putting Malvika and sHiLLing together, players without sHiLLing and not-Link characters can experience Malvika in all her glory. Well, thankfully, we can see the answer with how many Malvika mains rejoiced in deleting everything in sight with the duo. And of course, we can just look at when it was Chinese New Year's. If sHiLLing was released on the second half, you already know the clickbait that would have shown up. Malvika is the worst Archon. She's tied to sHiLLing and shafting players that didn't pull. The list goes on and on. Secondly, I want to disprove that Hoyo is not trying, primarily in regards to 3.0 storytelling and presentation. Remember when I talked about the mimetic virus and how it spread around? Let me give y'all a prime example that I found in the wild. I was wanting to learn more about Nikador and Naeus and found a great video explaining the topic. Being on mobile, the most popular comment naturally showed up. Let's just stare at it for a second.
And I've got to say, in all honesty, it's the biggest piece of dog shit that I have ever heard.
I wonder where this take, bar for bar, word for word, came from. I recommend you watching the video if you want to know why you are or did see the word presentation everywhere. It's even the most popular comment under the developer radio. If I see the word presentation one more time, I swear to God, Mem is gonna eat the curb. This video sparked a huge controversy and led to a domino effect which made a lot of people band together, but also caused a lot of people to just start complaining about something I don't think was even true. Just like the Blackscreen Drama, this is also nothing more than a Mandela effect live in the making. Now, Gachasmack's main take was,
the very first element I want to tackle off rip is going to be the one I have the most discontent with. This is to no one's surprise that watch my live stream. It's the presentation of the story, which many people get confused about. They think, oh, the story's so good, bro. No, the dialogue is good. The storytelling is absolute dog doo-doo. I gave it a 0.1 out of 10, which is as close to a 0 as possible. And I did that intentionally because that's the amount of effort I think they put inside of the story.
Which this sentiment spread like fire. Though it sounds like he knows what he's talking about, I don't think he does. Which is an issue because he's a pretty big voice in the sphere. Now, I'm claiming this because his argument literally boils down to 2 points. 1, the camera work and character animations are ass, and 2, why no pictures? Before I get to my points, I want to say I understand people's want for improved characters' animations, and I agree. More facial expressions, body movement, and hand gestures would of course be welcomed. While editing this section where I talked about this post comparing 1.0 and 3.0's animations, I realized, wow, this scene with Roaches and sHiLLing were actually really well done. Great animations, expressions, but also the camera work. So I was like, yeah, the 3.0 doesn't really compare to it. But then I asked myself, why is this the case? And then the answer actually came pretty quick. It's because that 1.0 story and scene were character driven, while the entirety of 3.0 was story driven, which would greatly impact how the scenes would be portrayed. A character driven plot focuses on the character, their relationships, and emotions. As such, the game would try to emphasize these characteristics via more detailed animations and camera work. A story driven plot like 3.0, however, focuses on the overarching narrative, the world, and major events. As such, the game and the camera would more so focus on the set pieces, scale, and other factors to highlight the broader story rather than individual character emotions. Also, the post I mentioned was actually nitpicky as hell. The characters in the story were all surprisingly super expressive. Stell, Triby, Aglaya, and even Mighty were very expressive. The main two that weren't were actually Phainon and Dan Heng. With most of the scenes including those two, it's no wonder why people thought the animations weren't up to par. Dan Heng literally is ore farming in every scene he's in.
Regrettably, the both of you have failed the test. While you may be a ray of hope that fell into
We do not care.
darkness,
And Phainon is almost always smiling, even though his face doesn't match his emotions and the way he delivers his words, besides when he gets scared. So then, I got thinking, it's literally just Phainon whose facial expressions
Weird.
are whack and don't match. And then I realized, this guy's sus as hell. Let's look at this scene real quick.
Castorus, our hesitation is just cruelty to Mighty. How many lives must he have lost already? My apologies, Hornix.
Ah, did you see that? Why is he smiling there? And then it came to me. This is probably on purpose. So yeah, everything that people had a gripe with, I'm pretty sure it was a design choice, but I'll further expand soon enough. Now, to my first point for Gachasmack and many others' take. 1. Just because you don't understand the beauty of their presentation doesn't mean it's not beautiful. Just because you don't get the joke doesn't mean it wasn't a good joke. Cinematography includes things like camera angle, camera movement, composition, and a lot of other stuff. Though most people will see a scene and just be like, meh, in reality it actually was probably very well thought out. Thankfully, we got Mr. Spaceman Stuff who did a pretty good job in pointing out some examples. I will just scroll down quickly just so you can see how well thought out some of these scenes were, especially because it was so low key. Star Rail, just like Genshin, is masterful when it comes to camera angles, although Genshin has gotten a lot better in 5.3. These people know what they're doing. For Star Rail, we can absolutely see this during the 2.7 quest with Robin and Sunday's dialogue. Y'all 100% should watch the fix scene with Robin's English voice because it's really damn good and shows just how good Hoyo is at this type of stuff. Going back to 3.0, the camera work was good, which you can confirm yourself if you rewatch a playthrough. They had plenty of unique camera angles to display the cast, whether it was close-ups, shot reverse shot, wide shots, you name it. Now, Gachasmack brings to light one example where there was a static shot between characters. The thing is, this barely happened in the story where Hoyo should have used a more dynamic camera like a shot reverse shot sequence. When there were static scenes, it often was because it was a group scenario where they wanted to showcase the cast. Or 2, the scene's optimal camera choice would be a static shot due to the quest being dialogue and exposition heavy. Yet, so many people were complaining about the presentation still. The question is why? Well, it's likely because the camera didn't pan. However, the camera not panning does not mean shitty presentation. If I had to guess, what many people wanted may have looked something like this.
我也投我祖宗爷爷一票，再加上玄烨仙子。
那我就要选连山二贤了。那些世外高人都是深藏不露的，小说里都是这样写的啦。你说嘞？
如果是武侠小说，我可能也会这么选。但很不巧，我读过《竹林月夜》，所以我认为最强的是《桃兜三仙》里的白马仙子，她身上肯定有秘密。
咦，没人选云来钓叟吗？连玉衡大人都说他的剑法来自云来钓叟的抛竿姿势呢。
话是这么讲。
As you can see, a really fun scene between our characters. In regards to the camera and presentation in itself, it's practically the same as Star Rail's. Excluding the animations, which Genshin has recently improved upon, the main difference is that the camera slightly pans, or pans a lot, which does add a great deal to the immersion. Now, asking for Star Rail to implement more camera and character movement like Genshin is perfectly fine. However, calling the current presentation ass and insisting that it needs to be fixed misrepresents the situation. As you can see, it's all about presentation and how we word what we want. What's frustrating is that every single comment or discussion that I've seen talk about this completely misdiagnoses the situation. Not one of them specifically mentions camera movement or panning. They literally just say bad presentation and call it there, or attribute their lack of enjoyment to the static scenes present, which were probably used just fine, or attribute it to the camera angles, which were also just fine. It's annoying because the loudest voices criticizing this are often the ones who don't actually understand what they're talking about, or they didn't even pay attention to the story in the first place. Now, to my second point, Mr. Smack's entire Hoyo telling not showing argument boils down to Hoyo not having pictures.
You're showing me the background of this place instead of showing me this gory, egregious, and
he wants his little picture book. Dialogue? Why no pictures? It's like second grade me who didn't want to read the 5th grade level books because they didn't have pictures. Now, there's multiple ways to go about this. Firstly, we experience the world through the Trailblazers' perspective, not an omniscient audience watching a pre-rendered cutscene for every single event. Secondly, we don't need to be spoon-fed through constant visuals to enjoy the story. And lastly, choosing to tell rather than show allows us to use our imagination while also keeping future gods and characters a mystery, letting them reveal themselves naturally when the time comes. While pictures and visuals of course can improve the immersion, we also have to consider what is lost when using them. Sometimes leaving things to the imagination can make a story feel richer, as it allows the players to theorize and piece things together on their own. A well-told story doesn't always need to explicitly show everything, it just needs to create a world that feels alive and engaging through its dialogue, atmosphere, and characters, which I believe they nail. Further backing my point, when you go to the developer radio, they addressed a lot of stuff, but not a single one of them was directed at the presentation. Yeah, I wonder why. Now, these PP boo-boo brains criticizing the presentation are in my opinion the same people who couldn't appreciate how fantastic the 2.6 quest with Rappa was. I mean, the entire 2.x was phenomenal, especially 2.6 and 7. But the amount of people I saw hating on 2.6, calling it a snooze fest or pointless, don't understand storytelling, which is why I cannot respect their opinion when it comes to this type of stuff. While Bro and his goons think they're playing chess and the devs are playing checkers, in reality, they're playing tic-tac-toe and can't see the bigger picture. Now, why am I saying this? Well, besides his presentation take, let's look at his response to all of this.
Second of all, what this tells me is money must have went down. Seems like them pockets listened, you know?
This is such a surface level 50 IQ take, though it does sound reasonable on the surface, just like the rest of his takes. Guess what matters more than money to actual successful video game companies? Consumer trust.
And the mantra that we came up with during that difficult year was first trust, then retention, then revenue. And this trust battle took us almost a full year, if I'm being honest. And that's also when we did stuff like we removed all of the microtransactions from some of our releases in that year, taking multi-million-dollar losses in the process because the risk of losing more trust was so much worse at the time than the known loss in revenue.
As you can see, no trust equals no money. This is why they took the settlement with the lawsuit with Genshin. This is why they listened to our feedback. They want to make a good game. They want to build a positive relationship with the players. And while we get a better game, they get their money. It's a win-win scenario. It's so clear that Hoyo loves their games as opposed to companies like Ubisoft, Blizzard, and EA, yet so many people just see them as another greedy Western AAA company. Another example of this concept is Marvel Rivals. They are crushing their competition and it's not even close. They make a good game, listen to feedback, like their most recent issue with the ranked reset, and they profit. Sounds just like another game we know. Also, no bro, money did not go down. Quite the opposite, which you can see with their revenue charts. Though this is only one source and not the most accurate, recording only mobile devices and not having complete information on China, it still gets the point across. Globally, Herda and 3.0 did great, but in China, not so much. But it makes sense why Sunday outperformed, seeing how Jingyuan is one of the most popular characters there. To end this section, I hope you can see how a negative perception, reinforced by misinformation or surface level takes, can spiral into widespread misconceptions that cause a lot of unnecessary negativity and drama. This is why it's important to take a step back and evaluate things for ourselves, which I'll get to in part 2. Moving on, these next few sections will be about Hoyo baiting people, because I've heard people say things like bait character, patch, or whatever the case is. Because of this, I'll be debunking the various ways I've heard it being used or whatnot. The first way is when people say, what about the times Hoyo releases a character which baits you to spend, and then later releases another cool character, but because you don't have the Jaded primos, you gotta whip out the credit card. Now, this argument for bait has been often used in 2 particular scenarios from what I've seen. 1, there's a rerun for a character, and 2, the new unit is bait. For these 2 situations, there are 2 ways that bait's being used. The first way, which I'll call buffet bait. Don't pull on these characters because the character you want is coming out soon. It's like saying, don't eat all the breadsticks at the all-you-can-eat because all the carbs will fill you up before the main course. This reasoning is a-okay and based as hell. However, the second way, which I'll call doomer bait, goes something like this. Don't pull this character as they're just gonna get or already power crept. Don't pull facial rerun or don't pull for the Herta because they're just gonna get power crept anyway. I absolutely loathe this second use, not only because of how pessimistic it is, but also because they fail to consider the most important factor in a gacha game. You should pull characters you like, and that's all there is to it. The second use stems from the logic that one should maximize the resources and get the best bang for their buck. This in itself is fine, but so many gacha players in my opinion take this to the extreme, where anything that isn't literally the best is just not worth it. Side grades just don't exist, and anything that gets creeped is useless. This mindset has it so nothing would ever be worth it, as it would all just get power crept in the end. It's like you find an amazing girl, but pass and say, yeah, there's just gonna be someone even better eventually. This girl gotta be bait for real. Oh my days! If you think like this, I hope you see how stupid you sound right now. Though people refer to this second manner as bait, I will not call it that because that's not what's happening. I'm simply referring to it as doomer bait for simplicity's sake. Also, in these type of scenarios, it's on the player for making that conscious decision to spend and buy the new thing. Just because you're in a LEGO store with cool sets everywhere, doesn't mean you should go on a shopping spree, as it's up to you to manage your money. Yes, this type of bait is on the player. On the topic of reruns, I want to point out that people are seriously complaining about more reruns. What the heck, people? More reruns equals good because you have more opportunities to get characters you missed. It's that simple. Now, I do have an interesting idea for reruns that may make them more enticing for players. I think it'd be really cool if they made older characters and their reruns cost less as time progresses. For this, think of how a GPU gradually drops in price as newer and more powerful models come out. If older 5-star characters become cheaper over time, it'll allow players to get these older units without them feeling like they're overpaying for something that's outdated. And it lets players who've owned them for a while get the bump in power they need due to the cheaper Eidolons. Paying 76 pulls for a blade?
I don't know.
Will you bump that down to like 40 or 50?
Approved!
Just in case people think that Hoyo promoting the characters through advertisement and hype is bait, that's not what bait means. The idea of bait implies manipulation or deceit, where you feel tricked into spending money. However, my question to you is, how exactly is Hoyo deceiving or tricking you with their trailers or cinematics? Whether it's their design, good advertising, or good writing, there's no deceit in the product they're making. Them releasing cool stuff back to back also doesn't change this fact and is a testament with how consistent they are with making good characters. When they convince you to pull a character, it's not called bait, it's called good advertising. Speaking of getting the best bang for your buck, there are different factors which may influence how easy it is to make a wise purchase. In Honkai and Genshin, we always get a preview on the next banners and many of the upcoming characters, which should help us plan on who to pull. This alone should prevent you from being baited. But we could go one step further into the dream territory where we get extra knowledge on the future. I personally like covering this content so people can make better decisions, but I understand not everyone looks at this type of content. There's also stuff out there like who to pull or just showcases which can help you decide. On the opposite side of the spectrum, there are factors that may make it difficult to make a good decision. Though this would just be one factor, I believe content creators may be a big contributor for the issue of bait, and not Hoyo. Whether it's the clickbait thumbnails and titles or unrealistic showcases, people absolutely can get baited by this. Wow, my favorite YouTuber just hit 2 gazillion damage and now screaming this new unit is broken? I wonder how little Timmy with his mom's credit card will react. But in all seriousness, it really just depends on the creator. A lot of the guides that I've seen are usually very transparent and use realistic stuff, even if the thumbnail is clickbaity as hell. What I'm trying to say is that whether intentional or not, content made can mislead players, especially if the viewers aren't paying attention, which is why we as content creators need to be transparent with the content we make and stuff we say. Of course, it's also up to the player to understand that these things are showcases. Now, the final thing in regards to Hoyo and baiting is that they cater the endgame mode to the newest unit. For this part, I will be talking about Honkai Star Rail. And yes, they do. The question is it an issue? Now, from an advertising perspective, this could be considered deceptive advertising, more specifically a false demonstration / dramatization, which refers to the use of exaggerated, misleading, or fabricated scenarios to showcase a product's capabilities or performance. This practice is designed to convince consumers of a product's effectiveness in ways that might not hold true under real-world conditions. Now, Star Rail sounds like it absolutely falls under it with MOC, pure fiction, and apocalyptic shadow. But the reason why I believe this argument falls through is because the endgame mode is not how they showcase the characters. This is because the aptitude showcase is what demonstrates the characters, not the endgame modes. Why do you think they always have fairly underwhelming showcases? The pre-release livestreams for the characters also showcase the characters and how they are to be used, but they never have the damage numbers. It's because of these facts that I say there's no deceptive advertising. But this answer isn't really satisfying. So, rather, is it bad that the endgame modes favor the newest units or things from a gameplay perspective? I would say no if it's done right, as the question is not black and white. I believe it's fine as it incentivizes you to switch up your style as the game evolves, bringing new challenges to freshen up the game. Sometimes it may favor you, and other times it may not. The biggest thing is how they implement it, as there's a fine line between encouraging variety and making content feel far too restrictive. The question is, where does one draw the line? I believe that if they make it so it favors a playstyle a little bit, it's not an issue. For example, when the enemy lineup is AoE Ice Week because of Big Herder's release, my Jingliu says hello, but a team like Fei Xiao won't perform as well. And the opposite happens too. When they released Yunli and Fei Xiao with the MOC having Hulei, well, my Jingliu struggled a bit, but I still pull through because of proper planning and playing. Now, if they make it favor a lot, that's where it gets tricky. This is where stuff like the old DOT pure fictions or even present day apocalyptic shadow fall under. It feels very bad when you don't match, but it's definitely doable. Unfortunately, I can't really say if it's okay or not because it heavily depends on perspective. What I can say is that if they make a particular thing basically mandatory, that's a no-no. In Star Rail, Something Unto Death is a great example of good game design which favored a new comp, that being DOT. The thing is, those eyeballs were still pretty easy to break regardless. Now, imagine if they made it so the eyeballs were nigh unbreakable without DOT. Then there will be an issue. Now, we cannot mistake teams not performing well in the endgame modes they are not designed for this particular issue. Being favored and being a requirement are two very different things. Bringing a single target team into an AoE environment is not the environment's fault. It's like bringing fire Pokemon into a water gym. The current MOC with Nikador will greatly reward AoE, Blast, and certain elements. This may make single target or off element teams feel awful to play, if not unusable for some. But because people have different thresholds on what could be considered unusable or impossible, the issue becomes very tricky. So yeah, no real definitive answer, but a general vague rule of thumb of slight favor is fine and impossible without probably isn't. This latter section of it was created because of the ridiculous overuse of the word sHiLlinG. I see it thrown around everywhere. Oh, the boss is imaginary weak? Oh, Rappa sHiLlinG. The boss is fire weak? Oh, definitely Firefly sHiLlinG. AoE enemies? Oh, we're hurt of sHiLlinG now. Just play the game, bro. The game clearly has different metas or themes just like any other game. It's really not that big of a deal. I want to finish off this section by reminding people that Starro isn't a one-size-fits-all type game. Though you can invest to a point where it does become one, generally it isn't, and this is fine. This is because Starro encourages you to have multiple team types to tackle different challenges. This isn't like Genshin where you can use one team regardless of the boss to take on everything, which is okay. Now, the discussion of whether or not you get the resources to, that's for another day. Now it's time to talk about culture. Rather than talk about the individual dramas that have occurred like the first section, I'll be talking about why these issues probably occurred instead, because it's a systemic issue caused by the culture that is present. Rather than us cleaning up the river, it would be better to go straight for the source. Of course, I will give examples. Now, what exactly is going on with the culture? Firstly, I believe the community is too polarized in general. We tend to see things in black and white with no room for gray. Because of this, people ignore the nuance and drama often gets blown way out of proportion. Let's start with a recent example as of making this video, the Strife of Creation MOC drama. Firstly, the topic of HP inflation in power creep has been brewing for the past 2 months, with the overall morale of the community at an all-time low. But the developer radio did bring a lot of hope back in the community. But then the MOC dropped, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back. As you could assume, this MOC was harder than the last one, and as such, a lot of people were getting their butts handed to them, which caused a lot of people to become vocal. We initially got this based post and many others explaining why Nikador actually did not have that much effective HP if you played with the mechanics. But sometime later, we got this post which likely led to these type of posts, insert PvP, and then finally the Reddit itself went into lockdown mode. Yeah, it got really bad. I'm gonna go on a quick side tangent and talk about the Reddit debacle. The subreddit since 3.0, in my opinion, has been a miserable experience. It was just 24/7 spam complaints one after another about many of the dramas I've covered, from Inflorius' story, Nikador, powercreep soon, and many other things. Thankfully, the mod stepped in and did some cleaning. And you know what? They freaking did it! It is so much nicer to look at now. And guess what? I think there was a rippling effect. Let's look at this recent post about the Pride 1 tier list that was recently updated. I was assuming there was going to be a lot of complaints or fighting, but nah. Funny jokes and thoughtful discussions throughout. And it's not just here, but other places of discussion too. While on the topic of Reddit, I saw this post a while ago from the Zenless side of things and was like, yeah, their community is pretty cool. Funny memes and fun vibes all around. Just like this guy, the question is how? And I think these gooners have cracked the code. I'll just scroll down, but I want to give you my interpretation. But basically, their goon to doom ratio is simply off the charts. The doom simply cannot compete with how cultured these people have become. Those guys have embraced the horny and just have fun with the game and community. Now, I'm not saying we need a goon out like them, but perhaps we could learn a thing or two from them. With that out the way, let's go back talking about Nikador and the drama. At the core of the issue, the drama boiled down to the different perspectives on difficulty which would be derived from the varying investment and skill levels. On one end, some players simply didn't struggle, whether it was because they were very well invested, had the right units, or simply very good in combat. Some of these players argued that the fight wasn't difficult if you played with the mechanic. On the other hand, lower investment players simply couldn't clear anymore due to the difficulty spike, with some arguing that it was too difficult because you needed to play with the mechanic. Both of these sides have their nuances, but regardless, people on both sides of the spectrum failed to recognize that both perspectives and points could be valid. The difficulty of this or any other fight is relative and dependent on the player's team and skill. As such, depending on your account, this fight could have been super easy or literally impossible. But instead of acknowledging that people are at different points of the journey, the discussion quickly spiraled into the extremes, with either people dismissing complaints as skill issues or claiming that the fight was outright unfair. The second example I want to use to highlight the polarity is how people react to changes in the beta. When a character gets buffed, people rejoice, and that's fine. But when a character is adjusted or nerfed, some people act like it's the end of the world. A small 2% nerf is treated as if it were a 200% nerf. A clear example of this was Jiao, where his damage multiplier nerfs caused an overwhelming amount of dupe posting. Next, in regards to polarization, is that people view stuff as only good or shit. Lots of people unironically treat the characters under tier 1 as like subhuman or something. I don't know, it's crazy. This of course goes to the extreme cases of the best bang for your buck mindset, where not OP and broken equals mid, which I have talked about. Lastly, for this part, we have the polarity between the Hoyo haters and defenders. Back in the OG Genshin days, we had people who would defend Hoyo to their dying breath. That's where the term Hoyo shill came from, but honestly that has greatly died down. Because now, we have the complete opposite issues where we got the people hell-bent on hating anything Hoyo related. We of course got the big fishes in the sea, and you know who they are, but plenty of smaller fish who fall under this. Blindly defending or hating something is harmful because it creates an environment where constructive criticism is impossible to have. Oh, the story wasn't bad? Oh look, a Hoyo shill. Oh, you like Genshin over Wuwa? Oh look, a Hoyo shill. Well, we know one side of the extreme, that being the Hoyo shills, but what about the other side, the hell-bent haters? We don't really have a term for them yet. Thankfully, I've come up with the perfect word to describe these people, that being drama roaches. The people that thrive off of negativity and drama and somehow always show up when there's drama. Now, ideally, we don't use either word, because it's quite reductive and honestly doesn't bring anything good to the community. However, like I mentioned in the start, it's important to understand who or what is causing the issue, because we cannot solve the issue if we don't identify it. So while it may cause issues in the short run, identifying the drama farmers and roaches and calling them out should in theory be better in the long run. And I think this comment from this meme I found perfectly described why issues get so polarized. We got the drama farmers who take the minor complaints from the community and blow it the hell up. While we can't really stop these people from doing what they're doing, we can at least recognize that we're being baited and not jump onto the drama. Now, moving on from polarization, we have the issue of people just say stuff and other people go along with it. Rather than using their own brain, they just pair it with the narrative or whatever the content creator says. This goes with drama and information in general. For drama, it's like the 3.0 presentation debacle. It's just like the ugly eye situation and happens every time for everything. It's just one long telephone game. Let's just watch a prime example on what I'm talking about.
Her E1 quite literally gives her 20 energy every time she attacks and Garment Maker attacks.
What the fuck? Wait, so you literally have to pull her E1? Or she's simply not functional? Dude, pulling an E0 Aglia low-key sounds hilarious to me to showcase how fucking dog shit that character is. Forced E1 is crazy. E1 and Light Cone, that's insane.
I think that says enough. Issue 2, however, stems from issue 3, that being, people are far too quick to jump to conclusions nowadays. Not too much to explain here, but you see a thumbnail or title saying something, well, I guess you have all the information you needed, huh? Next, I found that people do not like talking it out, which derives from issue 3, because people nowadays are so quick to jump to conclusions. I want to use this example where I saw this user on Reddit talk about how they, as an E6 Jingliu user, was struggling with the story Fei Xiao. Of course, we got the comments saying shitty relics, skill issue, or whatever the case is. Like, come on guys. I tried giving them general advice and then went to try it for myself, because I haven't actually done it before. And I got clapped, and it wasn't even close on phase 2, and my Jingliu isn't bad by any means. Turns out, Jingliu just sucks against Fei Xiao. So I told him it actually wasn't a skill issue and just a bad matchup. And guess what the worst part is? It's in the Jingliu sub, the place where you'd expect people to know this type of stuff and want to help other Jingliu mains out. Issue 5. It's a pretty simple one, but a lot of us can't read. No shame in this, hell, I can't really either. But we gotta get better because this, combined with the fact that we're kinda lazy, makes it so that we just follow whatever is being said, which is issue 2. Before I move on to the next part, I want to say everything I've said so far of course does not apply to many of our players. There are plenty of reasonable and chill people in the community who enjoy the game without getting caught up in any of this nonsense. With that being said, let's move on to what caused this culture. What's coming up, we'll talk about some factors that have actively shaped this culture over time. Firstly, I don't think many players are properly informed when it comes to certain topics, whether they simply don't know any better or misinformation. This is an issue because it makes people more likely to accept misleading narratives, jump to conclusions, or spread false information themselves. I will use power creep for this and give a snippet of a future video to explain why power creep is actually handled very well in Star Rail. There are so many misconceptions to how people use and understand power creep, but I'll just go over 3 for this video. 1. People see power on a linear scale, where everything is stronger than what was released prior. Looking at my chart, this completely ignores how different characters function in completely different ways and teams. So how does it actually work? Power creep needs to also be viewed from a team perspective. As you can see, when you view it from this perspective, you can see how well Hoyo balances their game. 2. Star Rail does not have an issue of replacement power creep, which I define it as when there's a direct upgrade over something from the past, usually with units who have very similar functions. For example, Brilliant Into Sunday took nearly 3 versions, Blade to Mighty took 2.5, and the list goes on. Mighty will not be power creeping Aglaya, Castrus will not be power creeping Mighty or Aglaya because they are different archetypes. It's posts and narrative like these that I dislike because it spreads misinformation and negativity. And lastly, 3. Star Rail is not a negative sum game. If you remember anything from this section, just know that a team doesn't become weak because the new units come out are stronger, a team becomes weak because they aren't updated. For example, a follow-up team getting stronger does not make a dot team weaker. The dot archetype currently is weak right now because it's been over a year since it's last been updated. Knowing this, I hope you understand that power creep is not as bad as it seems. Your favorite unit won't instantly be power creeped, okay? Again, I'm actually missing so many points from my actual video that this likely won't do the topic justice, but the main point was that the lack of understanding causes issues. So by informing you on why something like power creep isn't that bad, this will help you see through the fear-mongering and misinformation that is often spread in the community. The goal isn't to convince you that power creep doesn't exist, but rather give you a more accurate framework to understand it, one that accounts for team dynamics, game balance, and how updates actually shape the meta over time. Next, people are jaded because 1. Hoyo and their questionable decisions in the past, and 2. The Hoyo community in general has been through a lot of drama. This has led players feeling more distrustful of Hoyo and more hostile towards each other. Not much needs to be said, but ideally we just learn from our past mistakes and move on from the issues. Thirdly, similar to people not talking it out, there seems to just be a widespread lack of empathy in the community. Too many people just struggle to put themselves in someone else's shoes, leading to unnecessary division and hostility. Now, I've seen hardcore players dog on casual players for not investing well enough, while casual players dog them back, criticizing them for being uber sweats. Meanwhile, we got free-to-plays who dog on those who spend, but interestingly enough, it doesn't go the other way around. This one is not too hard to fix. For example, I, as a dolphin, do not care when I see a whale who -4 cycles or a free-to-play who can barely clear. If you want to have an all-husbando or waifu team, go for it, because who are we to judge how someone else wants to play the game? Now, if you're complaining because of your decisions, that's on you, okay? Now, let's move on to one of the biggest factors of the doom and gloom, that being comparison. Guys, we all know the quote, "Comparison is the thief of joy," and oh boy does it show. The most obvious case is the tier lists. Tier lists are a good reference, but not what you should base everything on. Just because your character is ranked lower than another doesn't mean that they're useless or unviable. It's not the end all be all, because you know what matters more than tier lists? You. It's all about you. With the right hands, effort, and investment, you can be an absolute monster with your main. Following suit, stop comparing yourselves with other people, okay? We are all at different levels of investment, skill, and with different characters, which result in vastly different results. The only one you should compare yourself with is yourself. For example, I do not care that a herded team can easily zero cycle this time around. I'm just proud of myself because I'm able to still use Jing Liu and snag a 3 cycle. But what if you are trying to be a better version of yourself, but finding that you are still performing worse and worse because you can't catch up with the difficulty? I just want to say, it's okay. Sometimes the challenge is just hard, or your team just may not be made for it. But that's just how it be sometimes. Just remember that your worth is not determined by how fast you can clear the content, or if you can even clear it at all. Now, comparison isn't all bad like what I've mentioned. There's a right way to do it. If you compare yourself to another for the want of being better, learning from them, and improving, then all the power to you. I don't want to dwell too much longer on comparisons, but when it comes to comparing games, it really just comes down to word choice. Just like the beginning, rather than saying our game is shit because it doesn't have X like this other game, just change it to it would be cool if our game had X, just like this other game. Finally, we can move on to the Troublemakers section. I think I've talked enough about them throughout the video, so I don't think I'll need a dedicated section to them. As such, I'll just put on screen some people I think caused the issues. That being said, I do want to go over one example which perfectly encapsulates the comment that I talked about earlier. This guy. I hope the title and thumbnails tell you enough. Check the comments of the shorts if y'all want further evidence of my point. But now moving on to how to fix everything. Because many of the things I will be going over have been discussed already, this will just be a quick summary going over everything instead. 1. It's just all about how you word things. As the quote goes, words are the clothes of thought. Just like how clothes influence how people perceive you, the way you articulate your ideas change how the message is perceived. Don't be crude. 2. It's about perspective, and people have different ones, and that's okay. More than one thing can be true. That leads to point 3, which is to just be more empathetic. No reason to be a dick, though I know I'm a bit hypocritical because I definitely was during some of the parts in the video. 4. Think for yourself and don't fall for bait, and I'm not talking about the game. Also, don't parrot what people say, do your own research. 5. Comparison is the thief of joy, so please take that into account when you're doing it. And the video's done. I'll be pretty surprised if you made it this far, but appreciate it if y'all did. It took about a month just to write all of this because it was such a weird topic. So many things to talk about and so many angles to tackle it from. I hope I got my thoughts across properly because I really don't want the game to go down a bad route. I love the game and the community that I'm part of, which you could probably tell. Now, in regards to the future of my channel, I'm for sure gonna cover Castris and also make a guide for the new Diverging Universe. Hopefully I can cover either version 2 or 3 for Castris and then make a guide for the Divergent Universe mode, but school's kinda kicking my butt still, so we'll just have to see. If there's time, I'll work on my power creep video, but who knows. I'll do my best in responding to comments and monitoring them, though it'll be a lot slower because I just don't have a lot of time right now. But yeah, enjoy the 3.1 story and remember to have fun. Peace.